Xiangwu tiredly remarks how hard it is to commute daily to college when Hanho arrives behind him and starts mocking him for being so weak despite just having finished his military service, but Xiangwu shuts him up with a quick retort. As they're slowly walking towards their college, Hanho frighteningly points above the main building and says that there was a huge 99 hovering in midair, but it disappeared once it hit 100. Xiangwu disbelievingly tells him he's been drinking too much these days and rushes towards his class. As he's sleepily looking at his professor rambling away, a blue screen suddenly pops up in front of him and asks him to choose a class. He shockingly looks around the room and sees that it's not just him. As the screen starts a countdown for 15 seconds, he hurriedly chooses a class with the most stars and becomes a Necromancer, and another boy chooses the warrior class. Suddenly, a goblin crashes in and brutally stabs a boy to death before rounding on Xiangwu. As the goblin approaches him, he takes a chair and continually smashes the goblin with it. Once it's died, a message pops up on the screen saying that he's received 10 gold. Suddenly the goblin's body starts burning in bright blue flames. Shocked, Xiangwu turns around to see the skeleton of the goblin bowing to him, implying that his Necromancer class lets him summon the dead back to life. A pair of goblins rushes into the class, so Xiangwu tries to test his skill and tells his minion to kill them, but as the three creatures is fighting, one of them takes out his minion's arm, so he steps in and helps the minion by beating up the goblins with a chair before the minion finishes them off. Once they're done, he summons the dead goblins as well and reaches his current limit for summoned creatures. As the others start to worry about how they're going to survive, he looks at the city's ruined state from a window and wonders if this is happening across the planet. As all of them get out of the classroom, they encounter a horde of goblins, so he stays behind to kill them while the others get away. While fighting, the goblins are able to take out one of his minions before they get killed, as he receives all the gold from defeating the goblins. He levels up and gets a random skill that increases his limit for summoning undeads to 30, so he summons the other dead ones as well and decides to slowly make his way out by letting the minions lead for now. As he goes down the stairs, he runs into Hanho, who he finds out has chosen the rogue class, which only has 1 star. They proceed together and face a horde of goblins and a large chief goblin. As the fighting starts, Xiangwu uses an effect that weakens the enemy goblins, but when the chief uses a skill that drives the fear away and strengthens the goblins, he uses one of his minions to cut its arm down, rendering the skill useless and helping them defeat the horde. Once they're done, he takes the wild spirit bracelet and a tall spear that the goblins were carrying before turning them all into minions. Xiangwu and Hanho continue to the ground floor where they see Jinseok, a bully and someone who harasses women, clutching a shield. They try to get out but see a screen on the gate saying that they need to defeat the boss in 2 hours to proceed further, so they decide to go battle the goblins headed towards their way, but Jinseok stops them, saying that they need to wait for the police or the military to come rescue them. When Xiangwu realizes that there's no use talking to him, he goes ahead alone to face the goblins and activates an ability called Death Scent, which reduces the enemy's power by 30%. Xiangwu boldly faces the goblins and starts fighting them while making sure to display the full use of his powers to the people so that they can trust him. After seeing him fight, the people start thinking of him as a strong contender, so he gathers them in a room and asks them to go with him to the roof so that they can defeat the boss monster and get out of the building. Almost all of them unwillingly look at each other, but a strong-looking girl called Jizoyun, who's from the Tiger Hunter class, agrees to join him. As he, Hanho, and the girl make their way over to the roof, they run into a horde of goblins, most of whom she is easily able to kill with a slash of her sword. When they reach the top floor, they see a heavily injured professor who sadly tells Xiangwu that all his students died because of his mistake and tells him to not go to the roof before passing away. As Xiangwu depressingly looks at the professor's dead face, a screen pops up telling him that he can choose whether or not he wants to avenge the professor, and that his decision will affect his destiny. Steeling himself, Xiangwu angrily gets up and the three head to the roof. They enter the roof and see a large horde of goblins prowling it, so Xiangwu summons all his minions and activates the Wild Berserker skill using the Wild Spirit Bracelet. While he uses the spear and his minions to fight and Jizoyun uses her sword, Hanho keeps dodging the goblins until he desperately throws his knife at one and aims straight at its head. Remembering that he was good at aiming, he takes out all his knives and starts fighting the goblins with them. Suddenly, the boss monster, the goblin captain, appears before them, so they kill all the goblins before Xiangwu resurrects them and uses their help to fight against it. As the captain tries to attack Hanho, Jizo rushes at him from behind and is able to finally injure it. but it still easily defeats all the minions save for 2. Just as Xiangwu reaches his mana limit, he notices 2 swords lying near him and concludes that he just needs one perfect hit to take the captain down. Xiangwu grabs the swords and makes 2 of his minions attack the captain before throwing one of the swords to the only one alive. When it takes it, the synergy effect is activated due to 3 people using swords at the same time. When they're ready, Jizo, Xiangwu and the minion attack the captain from different sides, and when it tries to block, Hanho stops it with his throwing knives. Xiangwu lands the first hit, Jizo lands the second one, and while it's disarmed, the minion rushes forward to land the final hit. Thinking that it won't be able to survive after attacking, Xiangwu thanks it since it was his first ever minion, but after it slashes the captain and kills it, it lands in front of him safe and sound. Suddenly, a bright blue mark shows up on the minion's head and a screen tells Xiangwu that it's become an elite goblin skeleton. Once they're done, Xiangwu gains the ability to create weapons out of bones, Hanho receives a rogue's hood essential for stealth, and Jizo gets a fire whetstone, capable of engulfing her sword in flames in battle. As they reach the ground floor, they see Jinseok arguing with a man and telling them that Xiangwu got killed, but he falls to the ground in fright when he sees the goblin skeleton. As Hanho, Jizo and Xiangwu open the doors and step outside, he calmly tells Jinseok that he looks pathetic. As the 3 go outside, they spot numerous corpses lying on the streets but don't encounter any monsters, so they call everyone out before Hanho spots a group of people nearby. They approach them and see that they're holding weapons, but Jinseok recognizes one of them as the student council president, Disong, and whispers something in his ear. After hearing him, Disong tells Xiangwu to kill all his summoned monsters or else they won't let him into their group, but Jizo steps in front of him and says that he's got no right to order anyone around and exposes him in front of the others for scheming unlawful fees through the student festival. Before she can say anything else, he quickly stops her with a vein pulsing in his temple and says that he'll let them go. After Xiangwu, Jizo and Hanho go away, she tells them that Dejiang took advantage of one of her juniors, which is why she hates him so much. They decide to take a path going through the hills to escape the monsters, but soon find themselves face to face with an orc. The orc angrily leaps towards them. Xiangwu and Hanho are able to dodge in time. Jizo tries to block it with her sword, but the orc heavily strikes her before rounding on the elite goblin skeleton that with his upgraded powers is able to effectively slash its shoulder. Xiangwu tells Jizo to get on stable ground and to follow the plan since the skeletons can be used as sacrifice if necessary. They dash forward before Jizo cuts its leg off and Xiangwu slashes its right arm off before the elite goblin skeleton cuts its head off. Once the orc is killed, Xiangwu tries to summon it but can't because of it being a mid-tier monster, so he creates clubs with its bones and gives them to all the skeletons and Jizo before lending the elite goblin skeleton's sword to Hanho. They walk on and see a barrier blocking their path and a screen saying that they need to defeat the boss monster to exit the area. When they see a horde of 5 orcs coming their way, Xiangwu has an idea and says that they should set a trap for the orcs. Hanho stands at the edge of the barrier and gets the orcs to rush at him, but when they do, they collide with the wall, and the skeletons, Xiangwu and Jizo ambush them all at once. After they've killed all the orcs, Xiangwu's limit of summons at a time increases to 7. Hanho gets a new skill that enables him to use a dagger at tremendous speeds, and Jizo's strength increases by 2. Later, they see a pack of orcs ruthlessly striking a van full of people to get at them. Seeing their pitiful condition, Xiangwu comes up with a plan and crashes a large car filled with skeletons into the pack before attacking them at once. Once they've killed the beasts, Xiangwu tries to get the frightened people to come out, after which the people show him a machine that gives you items in exchange for gold. When he turns it on, the machine asks him to choose a roulette option, bronze, silver or gold. Xiangwu decides to use the unlimited roulette ticket he got after defeating the goblin chief and chooses the gold option. After it stops rolling, it lands on first place and he receives a legendary class mysterious blue sphere called Tear of the Sea Spirit. Once he's done that, he chooses the silver option with his available coins and receives a Vanguard's shield. Jizo gets a red sword called the Leader of the Expedition Force, and Hanho gets a potion bundle. Once they've taken their items, they decide to go help Dexiong and his group since they might be in trouble, and this time enter the battlefield by running down orcs with the huge van. They stop the vehicle and tell them all to get on, but when Dexiong and the others approach him, he denies them entry, saying that they were thinking of saving themselves and abandoning everyone else. When he indirectly insists, Xiangwu makes him take his chain mail off before entering. As they're driving, Xiangwu receives a notification saying that he can summon mid-tier monsters now. A while later, Hanho tells him that they're going to need more space if they want to keep rescuing people, but he denies, saying that they're just going to be fighting the Orc Lord now to get past this round. He turns towards the people and tells them that they're going to have to face the Orc Lord head-on before he gets even stronger, but the already injured citizens are not excited at the prospect, because of which adverse effects on their stats start happening. So Xiangwu quiets them down and says that he'll beat the Orc Lord alone. Hearing this, all the people start to doubt his sanity, but he stops them all and turns down Hanho and Jizo's continued protests before stopping the van and heading towards the battleground. Seeing the pack, he summons all of his skeletons and unleashes them on the beasts. Once they've defeated them, they head towards the mid-level boss, who proves to be too much for them. So Xiangwu summons all the orcs' corpses that start fighting the other beasts. As Xiangwu defeats all the orcs and receives another roulette ticket, Dijiang and his lackeys try to join in the battle, but a few of the remaining orcs retreat and take them as hostages. He goes back to the bus and takes Hanho, Jizo and everyone else who volunteered to the orcs base, where the beasts are brutally torturing the hostages. As they enter the dark warehouse, Jinseok desperately asks Xiangwu to save him. Seeing the hostages' pitiful state, Xiangwu starts to attack, but as soon as they get close, the orcs rip off Jinseok's head. Shocked and angered, the attackers suddenly stop short before the junior black magician orc chief summons a poisonous gas that makes all the people fall unconscious. Hanho fortunately takes an antidote from the potions bundle and tells Xiangwu to take one, but he tells him to give it Jizo instead. As Xiangwu blissfully feels his mana, already enhanced from the teardrop of the sea, increase even more by the gas, he unveils the full power of his necromancy and lets it all out on the orcs as they frighteningly run from him. Xiangwu unleashes the full might of his current powers and is able to easily defeat all the wild orcs that try to resist from his undeads. As the onlookers gaze at him in awe, he covers himself in a powerful bright blue armor. As the Orc Lord wildly tries to attack him as a last-ditch effort, he summons his elite goblin skeleton that he's now named Righty, who uses the synergy effect to slash through the orc's entire body and kill him. As the Orc Lord dies, Xiangwu notices a legendary class item, the Devil's Bloodstone, in its mouth. He picks it up and after thinking for a moment absorbs it. Once they've killed the orcs, everyone happily rushes out of the barrier, and Xiangwu realizes that he's become the strongest and doesn't need the help of others anymore. As one of the buses departs for the nearest army base, a pack of colossal wyverns come flying through the city and easily devour it in the span of a few seconds. Seeing the horrific sight before him, Xiangwu realizes that he was wrong. He isn't the strongest, but he can become stronger. He boldly gets up with Hanho and Jizo and they walk towards the oncoming horde of monsters as a screen pops up stating that the tutorial is complete. Hanho and Xiangwu easily clear out a building filled with goblins and head outside to join Jizo, where he announces that they won't be hunting goblins anymore since they're small fry and offer little god. As they slowly make their way across the vicinity, they run into an area filled with military vehicles and meet an subordinate and his officer who's been injured in his leg. Xiangwu offers him a potion in exchange for some valuable information, so the officer tells them that there's a large QR code down the street and through scanning it, they'll be able to download an application that can be used to communicate with other players. They thank him and scan the QR code later, which shows Xiangwu a post of a person saying that they're residing in a nearby park and are at level 8, so anyone close to that area can contact them. Even though he's suspicious since posting requires a 1,000 coins, Xiangwu decides to head over to the park, but once he's nearby, the user deletes a comment and states that it was some random bullshit before telling them to be careful on their way to the park. A father tries to desperately save his daughter from an oncoming horde of goblins, but gets swallowed by the sheer amount of them and is about to get killed when Xiangwu, Hanho, and Jizo defeat all the goblins and give him a portion of their food. They spot a few goblins running down a set of stairs and start suspecting it to be a dungeon, as they debate whether or not they should go inside. The man stops and tells them to not go inside since he's heard that there's a strong monster there. Overjoyed at the prospect of finally meeting a strong opponent, the three head inside the dungeon. Later, they're hurriedly running inside the dungeon when Hanho spots a few stray slimes, so Xiangwu dispatches some of his minions that easily take care of them. They finally run into the Elder Slime and start attacking it with Xiangwu's minions since it can't affect bones, so they are able to easily dispose of it. Once they're done, Hanho points out that the people from before who invited players to a park have been continually deleting others' comments. Later, a few rough-looking men are conversing about how the easiest ways to get money in this world is by luring and killing other players. Suddenly one of them doubles over with pain and comes face to face with monstrous-looking man who says that he needs people like him working for him. Meanwhile, Seongwoo gravely asks Hanho if he'd be able to kill a person if the times. Bald Thug remembers his past where he completely turned into a minion of a vampire lord after being bitten by him. He was a low-rank vampire. He killed and drank the blood of his own henchmen. Professor Red was quite happy after witnessing it. In the present, a henchman of the bald vampire knocks on the car's door. His henchman reports that they just got a confirmation that their new prey has arrived. According to the comments, there are 3 of them and they are waiting in the park. They start heading towards Songwoo's party on their car. Bald Vampire tells his lackey that it's their 17th prey. The H apartment is quite big and complex, that's why it's easy to lure people there. The apartment residents stay quiet, saying it's none of their business, but once they run out of prey, they will target the apartment residents. They spot 3 targets and the bald vampire orders his lackey to run them over. Those 3 targets were actually disguised bone skeletons. Songwoo turns them into bone spear weapons, which pierce the car. Songwoo punches through the window and drags the bald vampire outside. Bald Vampire tries to imitate Songwoo and Songwoo kicks his chin. Songwoo asks him about the number of people they got upstairs. Bald Vampire turns into a complete vampire and tries to kill Songwoo, but Riley chops off one of his hands. Bald Vampire's lackey becomes scared after watching him. Songwoo asks his lackey about their number and he tells Songwoo there are 8 people upstairs. He was about to reveal more information but Bald Vampire beheads him. Hanho and Jisoo becomes disgusted after watching Bald Vampire kill his own ally. Bald Vampire's wrist bones are morphing into a pointed blade. He starts drinking blood from the head of his lackey. It turns out he got healed after drinking blood and his stats have also increased. He was originally a 3-star ninja, but he became a low-rank vampire after Professor Red bit his neck. Once someone becomes a vampire, they are stuck at level 1. But that's not much of a hindrance because if they kill humans instead of monsters, they can absorb their stats by drinking their blood. Bald Vampire activates Berserk mode, which increases all of his stats temporarily by 20%. But there is a big penalty of Berserk mode, which occurs after exiting Berserk mode. It reduces their stats by 50% for 10 hours. Songwoo thinks that this vampire class is even more gruesome than his Necromancer class. Songwoo tells Hanho and Jisoo to get behind him. He also orders his minions to attack the vampire, but he is quite fast, and he easily manages to dodge the attacks of the skeletons. He goes directly for Songwoo, but Songwoo blocks his attack with his shield. Jisoo Hyan attacks him with her swords, but Bald Vampire easily dodges it, and they both start exchanging blows. Hanho throws daggers, but the vampire blocks them. Hanho keeps throwing daggers, like a Gatling gun, which pisses off the vampire. He dashes towards Hanho, but Raid successfully parries his attack. He tries to slash the neck of the vampire, but Vampire somehow dodges it. Songwoo comes from behind with his shield, but Vampire destroys his shield with one slash attack. They both start exchanging blows, and the vampire is quite confident at this point. Jisoo Hyan tries to sneak attack him from behind with her burning sword, but the vampire is too fast and manages to dodge it. Raid was at the back of Jisoo, and he jumps at Vampire and manages to cut off his arm again. Songwoo orders his minion to attack the vampire, but his backup arrives in time. Thugs also become afraid after watching their boss's true form. His arm is getting regenerated, but Jisoo chops it off again. An orc skeleton tries to attack Vampire, but he smashes him, and it turns out that orc skeleton was just a mere bait. Songwoo stabs his sword through his orc skeleton, which pierces the vampire's neck, and Songwoo finally chops his head off. Songwoo's party receives 1,000 gold for killing a level 1 player. Now Songwoo knows exactly what was going on in H apartments. They were killing off other players for their gold and experience. Vampire's lackey gets surrounded by Songwoo's minions. Songwoo tells them to drop their weapons or he will kill them all. Thugs are afraid and they drop their weapons. They tell Songwoo about their true boss, but they also have limited information about him, and this was their first time watching their bald boss's true form. Songwoo realizes that their real boss has a 5 or more stars glass because he can make other players into monsters. Songwoo asks the thugs about how many people they killed, and one of them tells them that they killed 21 or 22 people. Songwoo becomes enraged and orders his minions to kill all of them. They receive a total of 5,000 gold for killing all of them. Even Hanho and Jisoo Yoon become surprised after watching it, but Songwoo tells them that if they don't kill them now, they will start killing other innocent people. Hanho and Jisoo Yoon agree with Songwoo's decision. The next morning, someone posted that the people in apartment H were murderers, and he barely escaped with his life. He was observing them from afar, but some other player finished them all off with his skeletons. Sergeant Kim becomes happy after reading it because he knows it must be Songwoo's party. Sergeant Kim posts some appreciation comments about Songwoo's party, and other students Songwoo helped back in the school are also posting good stuff about Songwoo, but no one knows his real name. In a depopulated building, we see a glimpse of a mysterious figure who became happy after reading the comments, and they head off to an unknown location. Hanho tells Songwoo about a new post by a guy named Prosecutor. Someone posted that if people want to post something and they lack gold, they can just comment down below this post and help each other. He also provided some other minor information like how they can use this setting to change their nicknames. Most of the comments are about missing family members, or useful information about synergies and wolves, which can jump 2 stories high. Songwoo's party arrives at Hanho's place, and Hanho hopes his parents are still alive. Inside the building, there are quite a few dead orcs laying around under the stairs. Hanho prays for his parents' safety. After arriving at the room 202, Hanho desperately calls for his mom, and his parents rush out to see their child. It turns out his parents didn't pick a class card. Hanho is skeptical about his dad because he used to play card games all the time. Songwoo asks them about how they managed to stop those orcs. It turns out those orcs ran away after Hanho's father used pesticide spray on them. Everyone becomes shocked after hearing it. After they finish eating food, Hanho's mom thanks Jisoo and Songwoo for bringing their good-for-nothing son back to them. She also prepared some green tea for them. Hanho tells his mom about the awesome things he did to help his party, but she asks her son to shut up. After watching the lights from outside, some biker guys give off a grin smile. Meanwhile, inside the building, Jisoo is happy after taking a shower, and she thanks Hanho's mom for the pajamas. Songwoo and Hanho are taking a shower along with Ride. Songwoo is happy to see Hanho's parents alive. He thinks that Hanho's father was quite lucky. He used pesticides against orcs, whose biggest strength is their sense of smell. Songwoo knows that Hanho must be overjoyed because he found his parents. Songwoo tells them that this is not a safe place to stay. The orcs which came before were just mere scouts, and it will turn into an all-out war if their main group arrives. But the main problem is that they don't know where to go next. It turns out, Prosecutor again made a post. He tells the survivors that one of his friend is a 3-stars pioneer, and they created a small safe area inside Yongyungpo Station, where monsters can't enter. But the survivors need to provide gold or rations because pioneer skills take up a lot of resources to maintain. Songwoo is skeptical, but he knows what the prosecutor guy said can be true because their world has become a game. But they can't take Hanho's parents there because it is quite far away from their location. There is another comment by a guy called Section Chief Gu, who claims to be a 3-star pioneer, but he can only let in others if they give him rent. This guy is in Hwasong Fortress, which is 20 minutes away if they travel on a bus, and Songwoo's party decides to head over there. The next morning, they start heading over to Hwasong Fortress along with Hanho's parents. Hanho's dad informs them about some delinquent who steals resources from other survivors. Songwoo is a bit worried about these third-rate delinquents running amok. Soon, some delinquents arrive at their location on their bikes. A cocky delinquent girl addresses them as Geezers and tells them to hand over their resources and gold, which pisses off Songwoo. Songwoo is about to order his minions, which are hiding in a building behind him, but suddenly they hear a sound, and all delinquents make a run for it. Soon, a pack of giant wolves arrives, but they are not attacking Songwoo's party mindlessly. Songwoo's party is at a disadvantage, so he tells his companions to slowly back away. After getting inside the building, one of the wolves tries to attack them, but Songwoo uses his brain and throws a slime-filled bottle at the face of the wolf. His minions start throwing bone spears at him, and the wolf dies. The second wolf tries to run away, but one of Songwoo's minions tries to stop him. Wolf bites the minions, but it was a trap, and Wolf's mouth becomes filled with slime liquid. Righty leaps towards the exhausted wolf and finishes him off with one strike. The last wolf becomes afraid after watching it, but he soon gets pierced by spears. They receive 240 gold per wolf they slayed, and Songwoo's level has risen up to 7. Jisoo Yoon is a bit worried because she thinks they are becoming a burden to Songwoo, but he tells her that they are quite helpful. But he is skeptical about Hanho's growth. Songwoo tries to resurrect the wolf, but his level is quite low for that. The next morning, a helicopter is being followed by some wyverns. Suddenly a field boss wyvern alpha male appears in front of them, and it easily destroys the helicopter. Songwoo and his friends were watching it from a window, and they think even army is no longer a match for these monsters. Songwoo's party can't go forward because some wyverns are sleeping ahead on rooftops. Songwoo suggests to take a break for now, and they will leave once the wyverns go away. Night falls and the wyverns are still sleeping on the rooftops. Suddenly a message pops up which tells them that they should pick a class card, which will help them survive in this apocalypse. Hanho tells his parents to choose a card with the most stars this time. A 15-second countdown starts, and cards appear in front of them. These same cards are also presented to other survivors too, and they disappear after someone chooses them. Hanho is trying his best to find a card with the most stars, but Songwoo thinks simply picking a card with the most stars is not a good option, and he should pick a card which combines well with his Necromancer class. Songwoo picks a 3-star Dark Mage Link card, and it combines with his Necromancer class to grant him new skills. He got a skill called Death Aura which buffs his minions and debuffs his enemies. Hanho was trying to pick a 4-star card, but someone else picked it before him, and he accidentally tapped on a 1-star Priest card. He got a new skill which shields him from his enemies for 10 seconds after he kills an enemy. Hanho's father picked a 3-star Pioneer card, and he can now make safety zones. Songwoo is quite happy, because now they don't need to go to Hwasong Fortress anymore. Hanho's father is quite overjoyed by his new Pioneer class. Hanho's mother picked a 1-star Chef card, and Hanho tells her she should have picked a class which could have helped them during their fights. Hanho's parents become sad after hearing it, because they raised Hanho for 20 years, and now their son wants them to fight. Jae-Syeon picked a 3-star Hitman card. Her new passive skill, Supreme Sense, heightens her senses whenever she's in danger. Jae-Syeon thinks she needs to become stronger so she can be more helpful to Songwoo. Songwoo asks Hanho's father to explain the skills of Pioneer. This skill costs 10 mana after every 10 minutes to create a safe zone whose surface area is 2150 square feet, and its height is limited to 33 feet. Once the user runs out of mana, this skill starts consuming 100 gold per every 10 minutes. The shield around the zone regenerates over time, but it can be destroyed by powerful attacks. Songwoo tells them that they can't afford to use this skill right now, and they will only use it for emergencies. Songwoo further tells them that the other groups with Pioneer will try to abuse their power, and Songwoo's party will stay away from them. Meanwhile, the wyverns have rested enough, and they take off. Songwoo asks Hanho to check the location of a store or a roulette machine on the forum, because he needs to spend his gold and get stronger. Soon, they hear motorbike sounds, and they become alerted. Songwoo has an idea. They will ask the motorbike punks about the location of the store. It turns out these delinquents were stuck in a meat shop while they were waiting for the wyverns to go away. Their leader, T-Song, is a level 6 fighter, and he needs a little bit more gold to spin the silver roulette this time. T-Sung arrives at his hideout, but is suspiciously quieter than usual. When he gets inside a room, he finds his friends there, but they are quite sad about something. One of them tells T-Sung that their friend, Yujin, had not collected enough money, so the vampire made her into a lesser vampire. T-Sung becomes quite sad after seeing his friend as a lesser vampire. There's another vampire present in the room, and he asks T-Sung why he killed his previous leader, Woo Seok. T-Sung replies that he had no other choice because their previous leader, Woo Seok, had turned into a complete vampire, and he killed many people. The vampire informs T-Sung that he will kill all of them next if they fail to gather 10,000 gold within 2 days. Suddenly, Songwoo comes in with his party, and he is not happy with the customer service provided by these thugs. Vampire asks what they want, and Songwoo replies he wants everything they have. Vampires becomes pissed, and his fangs become visible. After seeing his fangs, Songwoo mistakes him for the real boss of thugs in each apartment. Vampire rushes at Songwoo, and his minions get a hold of his hands. Songwoo stabs the throat of the vampire, and he warns the vampire to not move, or else his head will fly off. Songwoo asks him if he is the vampire lord, and he starts laughing. Vampire is quite powerful, and he breaks the skeletons holding him with his hands. He also mends the sword piercing his throat with his bare hands. He tries to go for Songwoo again, but this time he gets hit by Hanho's daggers. Jisoo rushes at the vampire and chops one half of his arm. Vampire tries to regenerate his arm, but he gets burned halfway due to Jisoo Yun's fire whetstone effect. Jisoo attacks the vampire once more, and this time she completely severs the burned arm of the vampire. Vampire is about to get back at her by throwing the sword piece stuck in his throat, but she manages to dodge it thanks to her newly acquired skill, Supreme Sense. Due to the new skill of Songwoo, his minions become more buffed, and the vampire gets 10 times weaker. Orc skeletons start mashing the vampire with their bare hands. Vampire can't bear any more beating, and he yields to Songwoo's party. But in reality, he is just pretending to give up so he can somehow finish Songwoo once he drops his guard. Songwoo is not a child, and he sees through his lie. Songwoo makes bone spears which pierce the vampire, rendering him motionless. Songwoo asks the vampire if he had enough or he wants more piercing. Vampire tells Songwoo that even though they managed to defeat him, but soon the day will arrive when their boss' true plan will come to fruition, and the likes of Songwoo will be wiped out. Songwoo had enough, so he tells Jisoo-yoon to finish off the vampire, and she receives 322 gold for killing a player. T-Song is quite surprised after witnessing the fight, and he begs for mercy. He tells Songwoo that he had nothing to do with that vampire. Songwoo tells them that it doesn't matter, and they should hand over everything they got. Hano tells Songwoo that these third-rate thugs had less gold than what he expected. Jisoo-yoon thinks that maybe this vampire was connected to the vampire at H apartments. Songwoo tells them that the vampire boss is growing in power and he is quite crafty. He is using these lesser vampires to collect gold for him. Songwoo is afraid because the vampire they killed had the ability to turn other humans into lesser vampire, and soon the vampirism will spread like a virus. Songwoo needs to become stronger because they can barely defeat a single vampire, and if they get attacked by multiple vampires at once, they will be wiped out. Songwoo asks T-Song if there is a store nearby, and T-Song happily leads the way, but suddenly a red system message window pops up. There is a question in this message, and it is asking about what should be done to those people who are arrogant enough to not pick any card during second-class selection for players. Songwoo has a bad feeling about it. Suddenly a delinquent named Min-sik becomes afraid because he had not chosen any card during second-class selection. He never trusted the system, that's why he didn't choose anything. He tells T-Song that he is not only the one, but he also didn't pick any card. Another red system message pops up. The system is going to turn all those people who have not picked any cards into monsters. Min-sik is about to be turned into a monster, and he tells others to run away from him. Songwoo is afraid because once they completely transform into a monster, they will not stand a chance against them. Songwoo tells others that this is their only chance, and they should attack them. Raidi and his other minions rush at both of them before they can complete their transformation. Songwoo is a bit hesitant, but he has no other choice. His minions start attacking them, but a skeleton soldier dies with a clumsy hit from a werewolf, and it proves that Songwoo was right, and they need to die before they can fully transform into a monster. Finally, Songwoo's minions manage to kill both of them, and Songwoo receives 6,000 gold for killing them, and his level rises up to 8. Songwoo is astonished because the werewolves they killed outside Hano's apartment were just 240 gold coins, and these werewolves, which were not even fully transformed, are worth 3,000 gold each. Songwoo selects random stats cards as his level up award, and his speed increases by 3. Hano is afraid because now they have to fight against powerful monsters like these werewolves. Songwoo has a plan. Up until now, he has never tried to make a dead human into his minion, because he thought others will have a bad impression of him, but now the situation has changed. Songwoo successfully turns both werewolves into his minions. He thinks both of them are at least on par with vampires. T-Song is a bit worried because Songwoo turned his dead friend into his minion. Songwoo again asks him about the store, and he tells Songwoo that the store is in a used car complex. T-Song's group only used to steal gold from others, but the group occupying a used car complex is working directly under the vampires, and they kidnap humans for the vampires. When they arrive at the car complex, Songwoo feels like something is wrong, because this place is too quiet, and there are no guards around. T-Song's vampire friend is also tagging along with them. They hear screams from close by. They start silently observing the situation. There is a bear monster and a vampire going toe-to-toe. Bear is punching the vampire like a training bag. Songwoo notices chains on the hands of the bear. It turns out that bear was a human, and he couldn't select a class because his hands were tied. And then he turned into a bear and killed the other vampires. The last vampire again attacked the bear with its fangs and manages to injure it a little at this point. Both the vampire and the bear are at their limit. Both of them plunge at each other, but they get instantly wiped out by Songwoo's werewolf minions. He receives 35 gold for killing the bear, and he turns him into his minion. Hano spots the same bus Kyungsu, the spearman, from school was driving. Jisoo thinks they were kidnapped by these vampires. Taesung is about to tell them the store's location, but his friend Yujin, which was turned into a vampire, has been possessed by real vampire boss. He is here to watch who has been killing his children. Vampire Lord gets to the point and tells Songwoo that he is a mere insect. He then uses his ability to inflict a lesser curse on Songwoo. Now Songwoo needs holy magic to analyze and neutralize this curse. Vampire Lord starts spouting bullcrap, and Songwoo kicks him with all of his force. There's a small red curse mark left on Songwoo's hand, but it is not affecting Songwoo for now. Hano is a priest, so maybe he can help Songwoo with his curse. Hano tries to lift Songwoo's curse, but his ability is too weak. Songwoo has been marked by the Vampire Lord's exclusive skill, Trace of Blood, and his location will be exposed to the Vampire Lord after every 12 hours. Songwoo's unique circumstances have triggered a special quest called No Country for Wicked Men. After receiving the quest, Songwoo headed to the Grade D store to try and get a good skill. To their surprise, it wasn't a game of roulette this time. Songwoo decided to go first and used one of his tickets. Even though the odds weren't in Songwoo's favor, he managed to win the legendary grade skill Vacant Sanctuary, which allowed him to keep his summons in a subspace and could summon them whenever he wanted. Songwoo stated that he just got lucky. But after seeing how successful he was, Jisoo and Hanho decided to try their luck as well. Songwoo then tried out the new skill that he got, and thought that it was a rather convenient skill since he now had a giant inventory. After Jisoo and Hanho had terrible luck with the store, they decided to leave. Someone that Songwoo had saved before was now surrounded by a pool of bodies as he kneeled down before the disaster that was before him. He thought that he was too complacent and that he should have followed Songwoo before. He had thought that the military base was a safe place. After evading the monsters and making it all the way there, to their surprise, it was already destroyed and void of life, a complete disaster. Everyone then started panicking and looking towards him for a solution since he was the one who brought them there. In all of the chaos that was happening, someone in the crowd told everyone that there was a safe zone and showed them his phone. After being provided with a way out, Kyungsoo decided to believe in himself once more and headed towards the safe zone with everyone, but what awaited them was anything but a safe zone. After arriving, what greeted them were monsters disguised as humans to lure them and use them as their slaves. As Kyungsoo was being ordered around, the monsters started talking about replacing the slaves with new ones and killing the useless ones, which made Kyungsoo nervous since he didn't want to end up dead like his friends. As they were going about their task, a skeleton soldier suddenly appeared before them. Even after seeing the skeleton soldier, the monsters didn't care at all and decided to just go ahead and kill it. But before they could even come close, they were all hit by spears that were thrown by Sungwoo's summons. Kyungsoo became happy after realizing that it was Sungwoo who had come to their rescue. After seeing Sungwoo, Kyungsoo thought that he had gotten a lot more powerful than the last time he saw him and wondered why there was such a huge difference between them. The skeleton soldiers then started attacking the monsters and killing them one after the other. Sungwoo told his summons to leave one of them alive for interrogation and just kill the others. After seeing how Sungwoo's teammates fought against the monsters, he thought that it wasn't just Sungwoo who had gotten a lot stronger, but even his teammates as well. After the fight had ended, Sungwoo asked one of the monsters about how many vampires and players were in the factory. After Sungwoo had received the information he wanted, he planned on killing the monster, but Kyungsoo had killed it first. He told Sungwoo that they shouldn't let any of the monsters live since they were the ones who killed all of his friends. Inside the factory, one of the workers asked the area manager how long they planned to keep capturing humans, and the manager told him that humans were nothing but a source of food and were easier to capture than monsters. The manager then told them that as long as they kept on doing their work, the boss would promote them to regular members, but he was interrupted by Sungwoo's entrance. The manager came down and asked Sungwoo who he was. The prisoners saw Sungwoo and became happy that someone had come to rescue them, which made the manager angry. Sungwoo then asked the manager if the boss hadn't told him who he was. He then realized that Sungwoo was the one who had killed the previous manager and asked him what made him think that he could make it out of the factory alive after they found out, to which Sungwoo just said his skills were the reason. Sungwoo then activated his skill and smoke started enveloping the area where the vampires were. Sungwoo had activated the Great Spirit and all of the vampires received a debuff. Sungwoo's summons then started their attack, and soon all of them started running away. They tried to kill Sungwoo to stop the summons, but they had no opportunity to get close to him at all since they couldn't even fend off the skeletons that were massacring them. Sungwoo's teammates also joined in on the fight, and Jisoo had managed to secure the hostages. As the humans were escaping, the vampires tried to stop them, but the skeletons didn't give them a chance at all. The vampires were being killed without any mercy, as they were too weak to even protect themselves. Sungwoo then told the manager that setting up his base of operations in a factory was a bad idea since it was easy to raid. While on the ground, the manager kept wondering who Sungwoo was since he was so smart. Right before things could end, one of the workers helped the manager by giving him his power, which resulted in the manager becoming a high-level vampire. The manager then charged at Sungwoo, but the skeleton soldiers rushed to his defense. The manager had gotten a lot stronger, but he was still outnumbered by the skeleton soldiers, and soon enough, Jisoo also joined in on the fight, making it even more difficult for the manager. The fight kept on going between the manager and Sungwoo's summons, which started worrying Sungwoo since he could end up running out of monster corpses, but the manager's sudden outburst of power was also on time and wouldn't last long either. Sungwoo also took notice of the fact that the manager was just the vampire lord's subordinate, and if he was causing him this much trouble, then he wondered how powerful the vampire lord was. Due to his summon's excellent teamwork, Sungwoo had managed to activate the synergy effect and was able to summon a werewolf skeleton. The manager then realized that the skeletons had suddenly become stronger, and soon he was overwhelmed by them. After killing the manager, Sungwoo wondered if he could turn him into one of his summons, to which he was successful. A message then popped up stating that Sungwoo could now view memory fragments. With the new skill that he had gained, he was able to look into the memories of the manager. It was a memory where the manager and the vampire lord were talking. The lord then asked his subordinates what they thought the purpose of the game was, but nobody knew, including him. He then told them that he did know one thing, and that was that they needed to evolve to become stronger and rise above the human race as superior beings. The vampire lord then asked his subordinates to help him out with a quest that he had received, which they happily agreed to. After Sungwoo had found out the vampire lord's plan, he received an exclusive quest, which was for him to prevent or take advantage of a massacre. Manhua was wondering if something had happened to Sungwoo after killing the manager since he wasn't moving at all. After Manhua started accusing him of messing things up, Sungwoo grabbed his head and asked who he was blaming for messing things up. Sungwoo then asked him to help him out with a quest since he had said he would do anything Sungwoo had asked previously. The vampire lord had just received news that the manager had died even after lending him strength. He was then asked if someone like Sungwoo would pose a threat to him. The lord then turned towards Madame Yang and asked her if she really thought that Sungwoo could stop him. She quickly apologized and stated that she was out of line. The lord stated that she did have a point, but as long as he was able to check Sungwoo's location with his curse, he would be next after the feast, and he looked forward to meeting him. Outside of the factory, Sungwoo and the other humans who had escaped were organizing things. Manhua then asked Sungwoo if they should be doing something like that when a massacre will be happening soon. Both Manhua and Jisoo thought that they should be preparing to stop the massacre from happening instead of wasting time organizing things. Manhua then told Sungwoo that something was bugging the online forum and that the vampires were luring a lot of humans. Manhua thought about posting a comment online to notify people of the danger, but Sungwoo told him to stop and think about it for a moment. Sungwoo thought that no one would believe a comment posted by them when they are trying to cling to life so desperately, and if he made a comment, he would also lose the advantage that he had over the vampires, which was knowing their plans. Sungwoo then asked Jisoo if she had found anything, and she showed him all the potions that she had found. Jisoo then showed Sungwoo one of the potions that had the ability to heal all kinds of sickness and that it would definitely come in handy. The humans that Sungwoo had rescued started thanking him for saving them and healing one of the members of the group. Sungwoo then told them that he didn't do it for free and that he needed their help with something later. Sungwoo then asked one of the players to proceed, and he then used his skill to create a camp that acted as a safe zone for the players to stay in. Jisoo then pointed out that they had started adapting to the situation and that all they had to do was prepare to stop the massacre that was going to happen soon. Sungwoo then told her that she wasn't obligated to stop the massacre, so why was she so into the idea? She told him that she didn't want to run away since she would be killed sooner or later, whether by vampires or something else. After Jisoo had said that, a message then popped up, which showed the start of the main story. A window with a warning also appeared with the rules of the event that will be taking place. After looking at the message, Sungwoo thought that the fight was starting for real this time, and Jisoo then told him that instead of running away, they should fight. While Sungwoo and Hanho were riding together, Hanho stated that it was unfair that he had to go on a dangerous mission, but Jisoo didn't. Sungwoo told him that Jisoo was able to handle herself well, unlike him. Naho then told him that people were responding to the comment that he made on the post. Sungwoo then looked at what people were saying based on his comment and realized that one of the commentors was getting a lot of attention. Hanho then asked Sungwoo where they were going, to which Sungwoo replied that they were going to level up and asked Hanho what level he was at. After Habho told him that he was a level 5 player, Sungwoo thought that he wouldn't be able to last a day by himself. Sungwoo and his teammates then arrived at their new hunting ground, which was infested by monsters. Sungwoo and his teammates then went ahead and started hunting the monsters, but it was difficult since there were a lot of them attacking at once. After Sungwoo had summoned his creatures, it became a lot easier for them to kill the monsters, and everything started going smoothly. They had managed to kill all of the kobolds that were casting magic at them. Jisoo then showed Sungwoo a convenience store that resembled the entrance of their old school. Since it was a place that was packed with people, Sungwoo thought that one of the tutorials might have taken place there. Sungwoo thought that places like Jeju Island would have been relatively unharmed by monsters since there weren't many people there. He also remembered that Jisoo's family lived on Jeju Island, but Jisoo told him not to worry about it. Everyone then entered the convenience store, which was the kobold sorcerer's fortress. As soon as they entered, a magic circle appeared on the ground below them, and they were all teleported. Hanho was the first one that the monsters had discovered, and to his surprise, they were able to talk. Hanho thought that the situation was okay until he realized that he was all alone. All of the monsters then rushed at him, and Hanho had no way of defending himself or fighting off the monsters that were after him. After all of the attacks that the monsters did to Hanho, he realized that it didn't hurt at all. He also remembered that he had gained a skill that grants him a shield for 10 seconds after killing a monster. Hanho then realized that he could easily take on the monsters that were there. Jisoo was rushing through the fortress looking for Hanho, but when they found him, Hanho was doing perfectly okay, killing the kobolds. Jisoo looked around and couldn't believe that Hanho was the one who killed all of the monsters. Hanho then told them that he had finally unlocked his hidden potential. Sungwoo ended up being teleported by himself, but they weren't worried about him at all. There were numerous carcasses lying in a huge distribution center containing different things. The hero, along with the undead, inspected the room. He said he trusts Hanko is with Jisoo now. The primary person expressed that he didn't have the foggiest idea where the exit from this enormous room was. Unexpectedly, he saw the cadaver of a man. He walked closer to the person in the beige coat who had blood running down his face. He realized that the person was alive and saw various injuries on his body, as well as a pool of blood under him. Looking a little, unfortunately, at the bleeding person, the legend expressed that in such a situation, The force of his elixirs wouldn't be sufficient to save him. Slightly opening his tormented eye, the person lifted his hand with difficulty. He highlighted the case, saying to see what was in it. Carrying the container to the person, Sunwoo inquired as to whether it contained a remedy that could be useful to him. Shaking from loss of blood, the person couldn't utter a word. Opening the crate, the principal character saw an unidentified egg in the data window. Data created the impression that this was a thing for a winged serpent knight with an unidentified impact. The portrayal likewise contained counsel not to detest this thing, since if you can safeguard it, something will happen to your fate. The stunned hero began to discuss this subject. After letting out blood, the person said that he took the manager beast sign. Bowing his head somewhat through the torment, he said that this was a sign from the proprietor. Taking a gander at the perishing fellow, the fundamental person attempted to comprehend what he was referring to. Before his demise, the person said that this world is horrible. Recalling the 5-star winged serpent knight card, Songgu felt that he regretted his demise. He expected that this person coincidentally wound up in a prison and, while searching for a store, took some sort of sign from the nearby supervisor. Taking a gander at the egg, the hero said that this class had extremely high demands, and he was probably not going to be able to hold out significantly longer. Continuing to look at the egg, the fundamental person expressed that it was undoubtedly a mythical beast. Giving it into the hand of the undead, he said that he grasped the reason why he, even very nearly passing, wanted to safeguard it. 4 little beasts, furnished with blades, rose up out of behind the racks of boxes. When they saw the undead shining turquoise, they were apprehensive. In a moment, a few blows from the hero's champions obliterated the foes. The primary person, with a serious look, checked out the commandant of the skeletons. He did likewise. The principal character said that he would attempt to vindicate his demise. He also saw that they needed to figure out what the sign was. By cutting little kobolds, the undead Songgu procured 150 gold for each. New kobolds, running out from around the bend, kept on going after the undead. Taking a gander at this, the legend didn't understand why they kept on going after if it was clear they would all die. Watching the skeleton leader cut the kobold down the middle, the hero proposed that these animals might not have come to consciousness. He said that they attack, die, and promptly become zombies. A strong blast was heard before the skeleton. Tossing out his burning hand, one of the kobolds declared that he was a performer. Taking a fighting position and covering his hand with turquoise energy, Sunu said that this beast was strong. One of his undead said that he was a lot stronger and would therefore effectively kill him. Covered with a mysterious air, he quickly surged towards the kobold. He flew up at speed and punctured the beast's tissue with his fingers. At that exact moment, the kobold, wheezing in torment, was surpassed by death. 800 gold were gotten for killing the kobold mage. The undead protagonists looked harshly towards the beasts. Shaking with dread, one of them said that the kobolds had no place to run. After a couple of seconds, the encompassed kobolds were killed with a progression of straightforward blows. For each kobold, 150 gold pieces were gotten. The fundamental person's level has increased. Seeing his hand radiating energy, the hero said that he must increase the number of subordinates. He acquired the ability Carcass Burst, base class, active class. Its expense is 10 mana, and its principal capacity is to detonate a cadaver. Another influx of furious kobolds, grasping somewhat surprising blades, ran towards the hero. The principal character obstructed one of the undead delegates with his hand and told them not to move. Gathering his fingers into a specific seal, he said, with slight expectation, that he wanted to evaluate his new capacity. The legs of one of the skilled beasts burst into flames. There was a boisterous blast that ended the existences of several kobolds immediately. One of the beasts standing close by heard a blast. 3 standard and 1 kobold mage, with a burning paw, looked at the entryway and chose to check what happened behind it. The cut of commandant, grasping a long sword, ran towards the foes. He cut the beasts who lacked the opportunity to respond. The Cobalt Mage, who went into the room, terminated a red-hot charge. The skeleton, remaining behind him, a second prior to the shots being set, killed him with 2 blows from his sword. Offering a thumbs up and a good wink, Sunwoo noticed that the one on the right is always watching his life. The slightly humiliated skeleton happily scratched its face. Examining the roof of the room, the hero saw effectively growing roots. He stated, with slight surprise, that he felt that since there are so many beasts here, significant things must be concealed here. But taking a gander at the roots, he believed that he had found only them here. A supervisor beast, a cobalt curve mage, showed up in the roots. The beast, with shining yellow eyes, was surrounded by a thick safeguard made of tree roots. The data window indicated that this safeguard couldn't be obliterated by attacks. Furthermore, it is necessary to obliterate the cores scattered throughout the prison in the amount of 3. Taking a gander at the Cobalt Curve Mage, Sunwoo felt that this made sense of the reality of why he utilized everyone and everything to safeguard himself. Taking a gander at the Smiling Beast, his eyes slightly narrowed. The principal character realized that he had to slow down for time. A red data window showed up before the hero's face. It warned that this Cobalt uses low-class death wizardry, and players below the 10th level will die. At the bottom of the load-up, there was data that it needed to be stopped in 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 30 seconds. Recalling the colleagues, the primary person, with his eyes extended in dread, saw that they all had a level under 10 here. Taking a gander at the battles between the undead and the kobolds, he realized that they were all slowing down for time. Sunwoo took a gander at the Smiling Beast, who declared that the principal character had reached a conclusion. He concluded that first, he ought to join all his forces. The fundamental person turned towards his undead. He motioned for them to come to him. Squinting his eyes, the beast with a nose piercing painstakingly broke down what was occurring. The hero Sundad gathered all the killed beasts into a store. They were tossed out before the Cobalt Curve Mage. The Curve Mage, who didn't understand what was happening, took a gander at the actions of Sang's group. Grinning, the primary person, closing the way to the room, snidely said that the unfortunate beast had been sitting tight for death for quite a while and expressed farewell. Closing the entryway, he utilized a blast. Sticking out his tongue, the beast looked with a dazed look towards the carcasses detonating before him. An immense blast illuminated the enormous room. The tree roots on the roof of the room were obliterated, and the wall was collapsing. Grinning, the hero went into the room. Although the blast was strong, the hero noticed that it didn't work. Taking a gander at the Curve Mage covering his face with his ears, he concocted another arrangement. A radiant yellow gleam emerged from the beast's eye. Because of the threat to life, Cobalt reduced the time to follow through with the task to 25 minutes. Gritting his teeth, taking a gander at the Smiling Beast, the hero furiously expressed that there was little time left. In a room with a few even coolers that covered the roots, it was composed on the wall that this was the meat office. Rushing, his undead Sunwoo ran towards this room, pointing his finger at the room. He yelled that they ought to rapidly search for the center here. Rapidly enough, the center was found in the roots close to the roof. In the wake of cutting down the tree, the skeleton commandant immediately took it out. A warning came that the principal prison center had been viewed and 2 additional required as found in a short time and 27 seconds. Hurriedly checking out, the hero expressed that there were simply 2 places left to check, the primary floor and the rooftop. He discussed how they expected to pick up the pace and do their best. The fundamental person made a few subordinates from dead entertainers. They were covered in dim shrouds through which their eyes and nose gleamed, and their hands were canvassed in fire. A first-level entertainer collaboration impact seemed, the condition for the presence of which was the presence of at least 3 performers. The impact was a 20% expansion in spell speed. The data window informed that the primary person can check the memory section of the departed. With a virus look, he expanded his hand towards the new undead. He expressed that this was a decent capacity, having the option to test the recollections of the dead. In the wake of evaluating their previous, He highlighted the elevator and said that he generally knew where the next center was. He called the undead to go to the principal floor. Going down to the primary floor, he saw the carcass of a kobold. Taking a gander at him, he expected that Jisoo killed him. Taking the center lying in the cadaver of the beasts, he happily proclaimed that it was most certainly she who made some meaningful difference here. The legend saw a console and screen flying at the beast. Turning towards the hurler, he yelled for Jisoo to find Hanko and Kungu while he dealt with the leftover center. With consuming eyes and a malicious grin, grasping a kobold, the fellow said that he was late. Along with the skeleton, the fundamental person scoured his eyes somewhat entertainingly. While taking a gander at this scene, squinting his eyes slightly, he took a gander at the person Jisoo. Approaching the hero, he asked him what was occurring. Highlighting the side, he declared that these were the stunts of the prison proprietor. He also asked what happened to Hanko. A tall man in a dull shroud, while obliterating the beasts, said that they lacked the capacity to deal with moronic discussions and they expected to annihilate the following center. They had 13 minutes and 27 seconds left. The entire group composed, annihilated the beasts. Sunu expressed that they don't have time and they need to find the center first. Cutting one more kobold with her sword, Jisoo highlighted the center. The effectively going after beasts said that they wouldn't let them through. The hero team has under 11 minutes left. While battling the kobolds, the fundamental person noticed that they give their lives to safeguard the center. With his hands collapsed, Sangu shouted to the skeleton leader. The hero plunked down in his arms and tossed him energetically towards the center. The undead commandant flew over a gathering of stunned kobolds. He, having made a little Su attack, cut the center of the prison. The data window informed them that they had 9 minutes and 8 seconds left. The hero's undead crews were pursuing the remainders of the beasts. The kobolds took off in dread, not understanding what to do. The data window said that the Archmage's defensive obstruction was switched off. Clearing sweat off of his jaw, Sunwoo expressed that now they just had to obliterate the primary performer. Taking a gander at the vanishing safeguard from the underlying foundations of the tree, the Archmage opened his mouth in shock. The fundamental person expressed that he would get back at him since he made him sweat a ton. The hero's companion, getting back to his typical structure, inquired as to whether they could get the supervisor rapidly since they actually had a carcass blast. Scouring the rear of his head, Sunwoo expressed that he didn't figure they ought to rehash the strategies. Hanho answered that something different could be utilized for the blast and proposed obliterating the whole structure with a blast. Going through the racks of garments, the primary person believed that this was a choice. Yet they had no time left. The underlying foundations of the tree spread much more effectively all through the area. The hero has 2 minutes and 12 seconds left. Sitting in a tree open to the entry, the Kobold Archmage asked Sunwoo how he did it. The fundamental person expressed that in spite of the fact that there were just 2 minutes left, the beast had reached a conclusion. One of the delegates of the undead began to make a fireball in his grasp. With one exact shot, he managed areas of strength for the Archmage, who took off from the blast. Gritting my teeth, Sangu expressed that the Archmage himself was unequipped for anything, and would reach a conclusion. 3 roots began to rise up out of the Kobold's mouth. The versatile underlying foundations of the tree started to fold over the beast. The hero group took a gander at the change of Kobold with shock and a little trepidation. The genuine supervisor beast seemed the soul of the fallen tree, a 3M wooden beast with roots stretching out from the primary body. Rushing towards a gathering, pivoting and running in the other course, they at the same time felt that it was not Kobold. Snarling with outrage, the soul of the fallen tree diverted the little undead hero. He grinned evilly and grains of fire emerged from his eyes. With his eyes fully open in shock, the principal character taking off saw that a yellow-red light began to exude from the beast. Sunwoo yelled to his colleagues to take off from the tremendous beast. Stopping, Jisoo canvassed her sword in fire and declared that it could overcome the beast's supervisor. Having struck his appendage, Jisoo perceived how the injury was instantly mended by different pieces of the roots. Remaining close to the undead, the hero yelled at Jisoo to evade. The beast's roots, which went about as appendages, were harmed by the fire assault. There was an enormous blast in the space of the beast. Grasping his clenched hand, Sunwoo inquired as to whether that was all. Bringing down his head and shutting his eyes, the hero's companion advised him that there was a revival spell. The liquid left half of the beast canvassed in efficient power energy was re-established. A few blows of fire enchantment arrived on the rear of the beast's head, which had recently recuperated. With his head ablaze, he turned irately towards the undead heroes. The performers made an ever-increasing number of fireballs. Taking a gander at Jisoo going after from behind with her consuming blade, Hanko asked how they could win, assuming he was continually recuperating. The protagonist expressed that the best anyone could hope for at that point was to continually go after the beast's eyes. Enlarged in shock, the data window advised that the beast's mana had run out, and its actual strength was beginning to drain. The primary person took out an evil presence bloodstone, an unbelievable sort that gives a devil trait. Its principal highlight is that it takes 2% of the foe's mana while going after. He declared with a sure grin that this is his gift for the savage utilization of mana and called the beast idiotic. The soul of the fallen tree, with 2 immense wooden hands, assaulted Songu from various sides. Hanko inquired with dread whether it would be feasible to stop this beast totally. The top of the room started to implode. The principal character said to withdraw. Every one of the people and undead began to run out of the room. The beast, unfit to stay aware of them, extended its hand toward them. Grinning victoriously, making a motion with his fingers canvassed in energy, Sunwoo expressed that not every one of the skeletons was with him, and they arranged a gift for him on the primary floor. Sunwoo orders to explode every one of the beasts lying on the main floor. An enormous progression of energy started, a blast going through the beast's whole body. The fire liquefied his body. A data window showed up before the hero's face, which said that he got 12,840 gold coins for killing the genuine supervisor beast, the soul of a fallen tree. His level was raised to 10. Clearing his path through the residue raised by the exp explosion, the principal character said that he didn't anticipate getting another level. Also shocked, Songu read data that when he arrives at the 10th level, he is given a roulette ticket. This is the 69th accomplishment in history that has a limitless level. A constraint of 100 individuals was endorsed at the lower part of the window. Now the principal character can add 5 additional followers. Taking a gander at the surprising turquoise thing, the hero stated that he wished it was a decent capacity. He acquired a base level capacity, demise response, active sequencing, and 100 mana worth. Its impact is to bring 10 meandering zombies from the chasm. The capacity has no limitations on the quantity of orders. Zombies vanish like residue within 10 minutes. The cooldown of the capacity is 10 minutes. Presenting zombies, he expressed in shock that he could call upwards of 10 of them. Taking a gander at the rubble of the area, he expressed that he expected to some way or another increment the number of flunkies to battle the vampires. Now he has the chance to bring 25. Taking a gander at the blade with the red stone on the handle, he declared that it was a sign. Tossing his sword forward, he unhesitatingly declared that it was the ideal opportunity for him to battle the vampires.